Hello, everyone. Today we're taking a look back at the beloved cast of Gunsmoke. They once made us feel the raw courage and drama of life on the Wild West frontier, but behind it all were fierce struggles among the actors in real life. From heated backstage clashes to shocking deaths, you may be surprised by how much their lives have changed in the video below. Amanda Blake as Kitty Russell. Amanda Blake, who played Kitty Russell, the powerful saloon owner who ruled Dodge City's Long Branch with confidence and charm in Gunsmoke. She was 26 years old when she became the magnetic presence who brought warmth, wit, and emotional depth to the rough frontier town. Over time, Kitty Russell grew into one of the most iconic and influential female figures in the entire series. Amanda Blake died on August 16, 1989, at the age of 60 at Mercy General Hospital in Sacramento, California. For years, the public believed she had died from throat cancer caused by heavy smoking, but after her death, doctors revealed the truth. She had actually died from AIDS-related hepatitis. Most of her wealth had been invested in animal welfare, leaving an estimated net worth of about $500,000. While Gunsmoke made her famous, Blake's personal life was far less stable. She was married multiple times, including to Don Whitman, Jason Day, Frank Gilbert, and Mark Speth, but none of the relationships lasted peacefully. After leaving Gunsmoke, she gradually stepped away from Hollywood and devoted herself almost entirely to animals. Alongside her husband, Frank Gilbert, she ran one of the first successful cheetah breeding programs in captivity, raising 7 generations of cheetahs. She also helped establish the Arizona Animal Welfare League and later supported the creation of the Performing Animal Welfare Society, becoming a passionate voice for wildlife protection. But her final years were overshadowed by illness and painful rumors. Blake had previously survived oral cancer in 1977, caused in part by her heavy smoking habit, and she even received the American Cancer Society's Courage Award from President Ronald Reagan in 1984. Then tragedy struck again when her husband Mark Speth died in 1985 from AIDS-related pneumonia, and only a few years later, Blake herself was secretly battling the same devastating disease. When the truth about her death finally emerged, it stunned the public. In the end, Amanda Blake's story was the story of a woman who conquered Hollywood, endured heartbreaking losses, and ultimately devoted her life and fortune to protecting the animals she loved. James Arness as Marshal Matt Dillon. James Arness, who played Marshal Matt Dillon, the fearless lawman keeping order in the dangerous frontier town, in Gunsmoke. He was 32 years old when he became the steady authority holding together the dangerous world of Gunsmoke. With his commanding presence and calm strength, Dillon soon became the moral backbone of the entire series. Sadly, James Arness passed away from natural causes on June 3, 2011, at the age of 88, at his home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. Despite decades of fame, he remained famously private and avoided much of the attention that came with being television's most recognizable lawman. Over the course of his career, his success built an estimated net worth of about $10 million. Long before Gunsmoke made him a household name, Arness had already faced brutal hardship. During World War II, he was severely wounded in the bloody Battle of Anzio, suffering lasting injuries to his leg and hip that never fully healed. For nearly 20 years of filming Gunsmoke, he endured that pain quietly while continuing to perform. Off-screen, he married Virginia Chapman in 1948, and together they raised 3 children, adopted son Craig and biological children Rolf and Jenny. Their son Rolf later became the world surfing champion in 1970, while Craig built a respected career as a photographer and founded the photo archive Westlight, working with National Geographic. But tragedy would cast a long shadow over his personal life. His marriage to Virginia eventually ended, and heartbreak soon followed. In 1975, his daughter Jenny died after intentionally overdosing on medication, a devastating loss that deeply affected him. Only 2 years later, Virginia Chapman also died from an accidental overdose, leaving Arness surrounded by grief that few fans ever saw. Although he later married Janet Surtees in 1978 and lived a quieter life away from Hollywood's glare, the story of James Arness ultimately became more than that of a television hero. Ken Curtis as Festus Hagen. Ken Curtis, who played Festus Hagen, the scruffy, stubborn deputy whose rough humor became a beloved part of Dodge City, in Gunsmoke. He was 43 years old when he became the unpredictable but loyal presence who brought both comedy and heart to the frontier drama. Over the years, Festus Hagen transformed into one of the most unforgettable characters in the series. Ken Curtis died quietly in his sleep from a heart attack on April 28, 1991, at the age of 74 in Fresno, California. At the time of his death, his career had produced an estimated net worth of around $2 million. Long before he became the rough deputy of Dodge City, Curtis actually began his career as a professional singer during the big band era. He even performed as a vocalist with the famous Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, one of the most prestigious music groups of the time. Later, he moved into Western films and became a frequent collaborator of legendary director John Ford, who also happened to be his father-in-law during Curtis's marriage to Barbara Ford. That marriage, however, lived under the constant shadow of Ford's enormous reputation and eventually collapsed after more than a decade of tension. Despite his relaxed and comedic character on screen, Curtis was known privately as a perfectionist who pushed himself relentlessly. Friends later said the pressure he placed on his own work often left him physically exhausted. Even his transformation into the scruffy, unpolished Festus character surprised many fans who once knew him as a polished singer and leading man. When he passed away suddenly in 1991, it reminded audiences that the man who played Dodge City's roughest deputy had quietly lived one of the most unusual journeys in the entire Gunsmoke legacy. Milburn Stone as Dr. Galen. Doc Adams Milburn Stone, who played Dr. Galen Doc Adams, the wise and stubborn frontier physician, in Gunsmoke. He was 51 years old when he became the steady voice of reason, holding the Gunsmoke family together. Over time, Doc Adams became one of the show's most beloved and respected characters. Milburn Stone died on June 12, 1980, at the age of 75 after suffering a massive heart attack in La Jolla, California. He was laid to rest at El Camino Memorial Park in San Diego, closing the chapter on a long career that had taken decades to achieve recognition. His lifetime work left behind an estimated net worth of about $3 million. Before Gunsmoke finally brought him fame, Stone spent nearly 20 years fighting to survive in Hollywood. He appeared in countless westerns, low-budget horror films, and small supporting roles simply to provide for his family. During those difficult years, he married Ellen Morrison, with whom he had a daughter, Shirley Stone Gleason. After that marriage ended, he later married Jane Garrison, a relationship that saw both separation and reconciliation before they eventually remarried. But just as his career reached its peak, his health began to collapse. In 1971, he suffered a severe heart attack that nearly ended his life and forced him to undergo a risky open-heart bypass surgery, a dangerous procedure at the time. Though he recovered and returned to the set of Gunsmoke, the damage to his heart never truly healed. For the rest of his life, he worked while quietly living under the constant threat of another attack. When that final heart failure came in 1980, it ended the life of a man who had spent decades portraying wisdom, resilience, and humanity. Dennis Weaver as Chester Good. Dennis Weaver, who played Chester Good, the loyal and slightly awkward deputy who stood faithfully beside the marshal, in Gunsmoke. He was 31 years old when he became the gentle and dependable presence who brought both humor and humanity to the dangerous frontier town. Over time, Chester's sincerity and distinctive personality made him one of the most recognizable figures in the entire series. Dennis Weaver died on February 24, 2006, at the age of 81, after quietly battling prostate cancer at his home in Ridgway, Colorado. By the end of his long career in television and film, he had accumulated an estimated net worth of about $5 million. To secure the role that made him famous, Weaver made a surprising sacrifice. Producers initially believed he was too handsome and athletic to convincingly portray a clumsy assistant. Determined to stand out, Weaver invented Chester's famous limp, forcing his body into an unnatural posture during filming. Maintaining that twisted walk for 9 years eventually caused serious strain on his spine and hip joints, leaving lasting physical damage long after he left the show. Yet the character became so beloved that it defined his early career and helped him later star in major projects such as McCloud and The Thriller Duel, directed by a young Steven Spielberg. Despite his fame, Weaver lived a life that many in Hollywood considered unusual. He remained devoted to his wife, Jerry Stowell, whom he married shortly after World War II, and together they raised 3 sons in a marriage that lasted decades. He also adopted a lifestyle far ahead of its time, becoming a vegetarian in the 1950s, advocating environmental causes, and even building an experimental eco-friendly home known as an Earthship, constructed from recycled materials like tires and aluminum cans. To some colleagues, he seemed eccentric, but Weaver believed deeply in protecting the planet. In the end, the man who once walked with a limp across the dusty streets of Dodge City left behind a legacy far bigger than television. Glenn Strange as Sam Noonan. Glenn Strange, who played Sam Noonan, the quiet bartender who became one of the most familiar faces inside the Long Branch, in Gunsmoke. He was 62 years old when he became the steady background presence who gave Dodge City's most famous saloon its warmth, rhythm, and sense of home. Even without loud dialogue or dramatic entrances, Sam slowly became one of those characters the audience always expected to see. Glenn Strange died on September 20th, 1973, at the age of 74 after battling lung cancer in Los Angeles, while Gunsmoke was still deep into its long run. He was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills. His estimated net worth was about $1 million. For years before Gunsmoke, Strange had been trapped inside one image. Because of his huge frame, rugged face, and imposing build, Hollywood repeatedly pushed him into roles as outlaws, killers, and especially monsters. He became famous for playing Frankenstein's monster in several Universal horror films, including House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Those roles made him unforgettable, but they also boxed him in. Strange spent much of his career trying to prove he could play someone more human, more grounded, and more relatable, which is exactly why Sam Noonan meant so much to him. Off-screen, his personal life was steadier than many of his co-stars. He was married to Minnie Thompson Strange until his death, after an earlier marriage to Flora Eola Hooper had ended in divorce. Yet even after finally finding a role that showed a softer side of him, his last years were marked by illness. In 1972, Strange was diagnosed with lung cancer, but he kept working for as long as his strength allowed, determined not to disappear quietly. His final episodes were still airing after he was gone, which made his absence even more painful for loyal viewers. In the end, Glenn Strange's life told a story Hollywood rarely expected from him. Burt Reynolds as Quint Asper. Burt Reynolds, who played Quint Asper, the rebellious blacksmith whose fiery personality shook up Dodge City, in Gunsmoke. He was 26 years old when he became the bold new energy that brought danger, humor, and unpredictability to the series. Though his role was brief, it marked the early spark of a career that would later explode across Hollywood. Burt Reynolds died on September 6, 2018, at the age of 82 after suffering a heart attack at Jupiter Medical Center in Florida. After a private memorial attended by family and close friends, his ashes were eventually laid to rest at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Despite once earning millions every year, his estate at the time of his death was estimated at only around $3 million. Reynolds later became one of the biggest movie stars of the 1970s with films such as Deliverance, Smokey and the Bandit, and The Longest Yard. At the height of his fame, he was earning enormous paychecks and living an extravagant lifestyle. But his personal life was constantly surrounded by scandal. His bitter divorce from actress Lonnie Anderson turned into one of Hollywood's ugliest legal battles, draining millions of dollars through settlements, alimony, and lawsuits. At the same time, his highly publicized relationship with Sally Field became one of the most talked-about romances in the industry, though the relationship eventually collapsed. Then came the physical and financial crises that nearly destroyed him. During the filming of City Heat in 1984, Reynolds was struck in the face with a real metal chair, leaving his jaw shattered and causing severe temporomandibular joint disorder, TMJ. The injury forced him onto a liquid diet, caused dramatic weight loss, and led to years of addiction to powerful painkillers. Rumors even spread that he had contracted AIDS, damaging his reputation at the time. Meanwhile, failed business investments and expensive restaurants cost him nearly $20 million, eventually forcing him to declare bankruptcy in the 1990s. In the end, Burt Reynolds remained one of Hollywood's most fascinating contradictions. Buck Taylor as Newly O'Brien. Buck Taylor, who played Newly O'Brien, the young deputy and gunsmith who brought fresh energy to Dodge City in Gunsmoke. He was 29 years old when he became the dependable younger presence who helped carry the series into its later years. With his easy charm and natural Western spirit, Newly quickly felt like he had always belonged in the Gunsmoke family. In 2026, he is 88 years old and remains active through Western events, public appearances, and especially his work as a watercolor artist, which has become a major part of his identity. Even now, he continues traveling to shows and rodeos to promote Western heritage and sell his paintings. His estimated net worth is about $5 million. Being the son of veteran actor Dub Taylor brought both opportunity and pressure. From early on, Buck had to live with comparisons and the unspoken expectation that he should match or even surpass his father's legacy. Gunsmoke gave him the role that made him widely known, but maintaining that success afterward was not easy. His first marriage to actress Judy Nugent lasted for more than 2 decades and gave them 4 children, yet the relationship eventually collapsed, ending in divorce and leaving him to face a much more uncertain period of life. As film and television opportunities slowed down, Buck had to fight through financial strain and the uncomfortable reality of a fading acting career. But instead of disappearing, he rebuilt himself in a different way. In 1995, he married Goldie Ann Maudlin, and that second marriage brought much-needed stability after years of personal and professional strain. At the same time, he leaned more heavily into painting, turning his Western watercolor art into both a passion and a livelihood, while still appearing in projects such as Truce, The Road to Valhalla, and later acclaimed Western films. What makes Buck Taylor's story so compelling is that it never became a simple tale of easy television success. Roy Roberts as Harry Bodkin. Roy Roberts, who played Harry Bodkin, the influential banker whose decisions shaped the economic life of Dodge City, in Gunsmoke. He was 57 years old when he became the financial backbone of the town, often appearing whenever law, money, or desperate ranchers collided in the frontier drama. With his commanding voice and authoritative presence, Bodkin quietly became one of the most recognizable non-gunfighters in the series. Roy Roberts died on May 28, 1975, at the age of 69 after suffering a sudden heart attack at St. Vincent's Hospital in Los Angeles. He was laid to rest at Greenwood Memorial Park in Fort Worth, Texas. Over a career spanning more than 4 decades on stage, film, and television, he accumulated an estimated net worth of about $2 million. Long before Gunsmoke, Roberts had already built a formidable reputation in theater. He performed in more than 40 Broadway productions and later appeared in numerous classic film noir titles such as Nightmare Alley, Force of Evil, and The Enforcer. By the 1960s, he had become one of the busiest character actors on television, juggling recurring roles in shows like The Lucy Show, The Beverly Hillbillies, Bewitched, and Petticoat Junction, while continuing to appear in westerns and crime dramas. At home, he maintained a long marriage with Lillian Moore, yet his relentless schedule meant he was rarely present with family. In fact, Roberts had developed a reputation in Hollywood as a man who simply could not stop working. Haunted by childhood memories of economic hardship during the Great Depression, he constantly accepted multiple projects at once, sometimes filming 3 or 4 productions simultaneously. That relentless pace slowly drained his health. When he collapsed from a heart attack in 1975, shortly after Gunsmoke completed its final production cycle, many colleagues believed the exhaustion of decades of non-stop work had finally caught up with him. In the end, Roy Roberts left behind the portrait of a tireless actor whose determination built a remarkable career, but whose relentless drive may have also written the final chapter of his life. James Nusser, as Louie Feeders. James Nusser, who played Louie Feeders, the lonely town drunk wandering the streets of Dodge City, in Gunsmoke. He was 51 years old when he became the tragic comic figure whose drunken ramblings often revealed the town's hidden sadness. Though often used for humor, Louie slowly turned into one of the most strangely human characters in the entire series. James Nusser died in Los Angeles on June 6, 1979, at the age of 74, and he was laid to rest at Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery. Even today, the exact cause of his death remains unclear, with many sources simply describing it as unexplained physical decline. His estimated net worth was about $500,000. Before and during Gunsmoke, Nusser worked steadily as a character actor in both television and film, appearing in projects such as Perry Mason, The Fugitive, The Virginian, and The Wild Wild West, along with films like The Rare Breed and Cahill U.S. Marshal. Yet despite working across hundreds of productions, he rarely received the spotlight. Instead, he specialized in small but memorable supporting characters, often portraying troubled or fragile individuals. Those roles earned him respect in Hollywood, but also weighed heavily on his emotional life. Over time, the line between the character he played and the man himself seemed to blur. Friends described Nusser as a deeply sensitive person who sometimes struggled with depression after portraying emotionally heavy roles. Like Louie Feeders, he often lived quietly on the edges of Hollywood, rarely seeking attention and rarely speaking about his personal life. When he passed away in 1979, the silence surrounding his final years only deepened the mystery. In the end, James Nusser's story became hauntingly similar to the character audiences remembered. Roger Ewing as Thad Greenwood. Roger Ewing, who played Thad Greenwood, the young deputy and handyman bringing fresh strength to Dodge City, in Gunsmoke. He was 23 years old when he became the energetic new presence, helping the town maintain order alongside the marshal. Tall, confident, and nearly 2 meters in height, Ewing quickly looked like the future of the series. Roger Ewing passed away on December 18, 2025, at the age of 83 in Morro Bay, California, only weeks before what would have been his 84th birthday. By the time of his death, he had lived quietly for decades far from Hollywood's spotlight. His estimated net worth was about $1.5 million. When Ewing first appeared on Gunsmoke, producers were impressed enough to expand his role into the regular character Clayton Thaddeus Thad Greenwood. At the time, there was even uncertainty about the future of the show's lead actor, and Thad was quietly designed as a possible successor if circumstances changed. After the dispute was resolved, however, the character was eventually written out of the story. Ewing continued acting for a few years afterward, appearing in films such as Smith with Glenn Ford and Play It As It Lays alongside Tuesday Weld and Anthony Perkins. Industry insiders even considered him for the lead role in Midnight Cowboy, though the part ultimately went to Jon Voight. Yet, unlike many actors who fought desperately to stay in Hollywood, Ewing made a decision that stunned people around him. In 1972, while still young and promising, he walked away from acting entirely. Rumors circulated that the sudden disappearance meant he was struggling emotionally, but the truth was far simpler. Ewing had grown tired of the artificial world of the film industry and chose a quieter path as a professional photographer in California. For decades, he lived far from fame, focusing on art, community work, and local politics in Morro Bay. In the end, Roger Ewing's story became one of the rarest in Hollywood. Morgan Woodward as Bear Sierson. Morgan Woodward, who played Bear Sierson, one of the tough frontier figures moving through the violent world of Dodge City, in Gunsmoke. He was 32 years old when he became part of the rugged Western landscape that defined the series. His powerful presence and deep voice quickly made him one of the most recognizable character actors within the Western genre. Morgan Woodward died on February 22, 2019, at the age of 93 in Paso Robles, California, after a battle with cancer. After decades in film and television, his career left him with an estimated net worth of about $3 million. Long before Hollywood, Woodward had already lived an adventurous life. Born in Texas, he learned to fly aircraft as a teenager and later served in both World War II and the Korean War as part of the Military Air Transport Command. When he eventually moved to Hollywood in the mid-1950s, he originally dreamed of becoming a musical performer or opera singer. Instead, his rugged appearance pushed him toward westerns and crime dramas. He went on to appear in dozens of shows including Wagon Train, Star Trek, and the legendary prison drama Cool Hand Luke. Yet, despite working constantly, Woodward never quite reached the level of fame some of his contemporaries achieved. Ironically, he became one of the actors who appeared the most times in Gunsmoke, yet he never had a single defining television series of his own. In later years, he watched many of his fellow Western stars pass away, while he continued living quietly in the hills of California. Although he remained respected in the industry and received honors such as the Golden Boot Award and induction into the Hall of Great Western Performers, the later chapters of his life were marked by reflection and solitude. Ultimately, Morgan Woodward's story was that of a relentless character actor who shaped the Western genre from the shadows. After all these years, the legendary world of Gunsmoke, 1955 to 1975, still lives on through the unforgettable actors who brought Dodge City to life. Their journeys remind us that the real stories behind the screen were often far more dramatic than the show itself. Which Gunsmoke cast member surprised you the most in this Then and Now story? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more classic TV stories you won't believe.